fact.
Hmm.
Max is a humble mastermind of retention, but he considers himself a student. Max, you have a fun fact before getting started.
Fun fact. I lived on a sailboat until I was 8 years old.
All right, let's give him a warm welcome.
Thanks, guys. Cool, thanks. Okay, hello. All right. Thank you for having me today. And I'm super passionate about what I'm presenting. And I would love your feedback during or afterward. And this is the question I was asked to answer. What is visual attention? Why does it matter? But to do so, I often think of the world in terms of upside down funnels or journeys. So I thought we'd start with quickly a history of attention as a metric, and this hopefully will be complementary to what Michael and Phil went through. And then I'd like to show how attention metrics are actually being used in practice. And lastly, we'll wrap it up with specifically visual attention and also throw in a quick demo of what we're doing with I-Square. Just a little bit of a disclaimer before. Meaningful attention to us is all the things that Michael and Phil talked about. That's true, but making money is also a meaningful manner of attention as well. And there's probably a lot of dimensions to that you could unpack and debate. We work a lot in media and advertising, so there's a flavor of that. And you can challenge me on anything or ask any question about it. Okay, the history of attention metrics. So I have to give credit. I didn't write this part. I'm borrowing it. It was inspired by it. But there's this guy, Kenan Buhik, who's from Norway. And he got his master's, his MBA recently at a German business school, Otto Beisheim School of Management. And he did it in a partnership with Meta. And his thesis was on attention as a metric. So he actually did a lot of the important literature review. And so I'm going to go through this quickly, but just to give some perspective of how people in also industry have thought about this. But you can go back to the 1800s where people were trying to define attention, and it's one of the most contentious and sort of abstract concepts that nobody seems to agree on. But this was one of the core definitions from William James. Everyone knows what attention is the taking possession by the mind in clear and wild vivid form of one out of what seems several spontaneously possible objects or trains of thought, focalization, concentration of consciousness, or of its essence. It's kind of a word salad, but that got things started in industry, I guess. And there's been a number of definitions as a metric, again, trying to quantify it as something you can observe. I won't go through them all, but I will point out two key outcomes of this. Too philosophical and very quickly become outdated. Every time you have a definition, some new innovation comes and it makes the old definition of an attention metric obsolete. So sort of a state of disarray. And if you go into the ad world, where I spent a lot, media world, where I spent a lot of my time, Kenan went and interviewed a whole bunch of people from around the world working at leading companies that deal or trade in attention, like Google, several advertising people. Phil Jackson, who's a lead measurement guy at Helion, and I was in this as well. But there was no one definition that prevailed. Everyone was all over the board, all over the place. And so this is a quote from Phil. There's work to be done of what attention means. There's no defined metric, so it sort of wraps it up here. But I think a few key questions have emerged in industry, and particularly around media and advertising, which is very, very concerned about attention. But some of the key questions to think about is, what's the relationship between attention and business outcomes? Can you show a lift or a relationship? Can you spark attention in those who are inclined towards action? I think, Phil, you showed a dimension of worthless attention versus maybe profitable attention. And is attention something that can be dictated by quantity or quality or both? So it can be observed, managed, maybe even traded. And a lot of people care about it. It seems to be the hot thing right now. And so they have all these industry groups. There's a council called the Attention Council. There's the Interactive Advertising Bureau, which launched its attention task force 2 weeks ago. Horst here from the Advertising Research Foundation is involved with an attention validation project. And ICOM, where they have a attention working group, which is their most robust group now, which I co-chair with Phil Jackson, who I showed earlier. So everyone's trying to figure this out. But to get through the next 15 minutes, I thought we should at least align on a definition for purpose of discussion. So awareness to a stimuli while ignoring other stimuli. So let's use that as a definition while we go through the next. Okay, so before we get into visual attention, I think the context is key of what's the landscape of attention metrics. We do look at this. We have advertising is probably the biggest industry has a lens on this right now. But we look at the world this way. In media and content, you start with media. So media are sort of collectors or aggregators of people's attention. And if you're a brand, you come to the table and you often do these partnerships with companies like Google, YouTube, Meta, or TikTok, with the hope of gaining access to people and their attention. And there's various stages of that. There's things like just the opportunity for attention. There's the actual physical viewability of media, where people would potentially have an actual chance of seeing attention. There's attentive to the media. So there's sort of flavors in the media aggregators that are accumulating people and their attention. And then often advertisers or brands will intercept the media with their own messaging and their own content. And that's when the creative has to take over. It becomes the job of the creative to capture the attention, to retain the attention. And you could say this is where the meaning comes in to then encode the brain with a brand message that leaves a long-lasting impression or potentially persuades. And the net is something we call attentive reach. Reach is a term in advertising of the ability to reach unique people. And we call it attentive reach. So it's reach where the people are actually paying attention. So very simple. And we'll show shortly, but there's been quite a lot of validation already that even just at a binary level of attention versus no attention, more attention usually means more business outcomes. Of course, there's nuances to that. There's color to that of good attention or bad attention. That's very simplistic. But attention usually tends to have a strong relationship with business outcomes. And so human data versus attention proxies. So when we start thinking about observing attention or measuring it, we've broken the world down into two data sources. So human attention would be the sort of very direct, overt collection of data that would signal a human. So in our world, which we'll talk about shortly, we use computer vision, actual cameras on people's faces as a means of signals indicative of attention. It's not the only one. There's, heart rate, like your Apple Watch, for example, or your Fitbit could be an indicator of attention. But there's a whole other means data source that's often used, and we call them impression proxies. So if you think about using a mobile app or going on a website, there's interaction data. So you're scrolling the scrolling data or the keystrokes, but those sort of indirect signals that are really measurement of a robot or a mechanical phenomenon that's being used as a proxy for human. And in attention measurement, we believe that both of them are really, really important. And here's why. Human data collection, directly observing humans in some fashion with whatever, type of signal that you have tied into them is almost a ground truth. It doesn't scale as quite as well, but it's super rich. It's super high fidelity. Lots of controls around it. Impression proxies or interaction data is a proxy. So by definition, you're not actually measuring the exact thing that you're trying to quantify. But the value of impression proxy data is that it's so scalable and so vast and so comprehensive. So there's digital breadcrumbs that are follow every interaction you have with any kind of digital device, and they're vast, and so you can get a very, very high scale, almost to a census level of understanding. But we believe the future is the intersection of human data plus mechanical interaction data. It's what's going to bring confidence in the mechanical interaction data and scale all together as one. And we see this happening today. So these are the major players in the attention landscape today. There might be a couple others, but these are by far the core ones, the core players. There's about 10 companies that have really invested hard, going deep into attention measurement. And we and you can see where they focus. They really plot out fairly nicely on a matrix of focusing on media attention or creative attention, focusing on human data collection or mechanical interaction data. And what we see is almost all these guys in the lower left are all clamoring for our human data because they want to make their impression proxies more believable and more calibrated to what humans actually do with human ground truth data. And then again, you've got companies that focus on what's the experience with media, what's the experience with the creative that interjects into the media, the message. And then on the right, you have these poor advertisers who are stuck amidst all this noise. As everyone's clamoring and trying to figure this out. You've got all the industry groups trying to figure it out, which is much needed. But it's up to them right now to basically combine and curate their own points of view about the world and call it their attention measurement stacks that they plug into their business and see where the relationships are with their business outcomes and how they can use attention to drive better performance, no matter what their KPIs are. So probabilistic, predictive, observed, and hybrid. Those are the major, if you were to segment the methodologies that are used in producing attention data, those are them. Can I take interaction data to predict what attention will probably be? Can I predict attention based on the creative variables within an advertisement? Can I observe the attention and then measure it off an actual human? And then hybrid, how do I throw things together, mash them up, and create something uniquely valuable? The last point here is something that everybody argues about is our attention metrics an input or an output? And I would argue that they can be either or both. So an attention metric might help you create a better advertisement. It could create a better media experience, a better app experience. And attention could be an outcome that you're looking at in your conversion funnel. I about 6 months ago, I surveyed about 350 advertising executives that I went and begged to answer my survey on LinkedIn. And over 90% of them believe that attention is a step in their customer journey, their customer funnel. So I think it's both an input and an output. Now let's go into the visual attention part. So we've looked at the landscape. What is attention? No one agrees on a definition, but we're going with one, the focus on a stimuli while ignoring others. Then we looked at the different types of attention data, different sources, the different methods. Now let's go into visual attention. We use computer vision and AI to collect visual attention. So we, like I2 uses in a lot of its software, we use front-facing cameras to understand what people are looking at on their screens, whether it's a mobile phone. And at the next break, I'm happy to show a quick demo on my phone. It works really well on the fly. You can download it yourself from our website if you're interested too. But we think about attention as the first step in kind of the journey to the heart. So attention enables your brain to enter consciousness, and the facial reactions, which have emotional signals to them, happy, sad. So we tapped into the decades-long discipline of facial coding, which can be controversial. We don't care so much about the controversy. What we care is if there's a relationship between the taxonomy of facial coding and actual business outcomes, and it does. So the facial codings is what build memories, and then finally, of your impact, what is the outcome or the relationship with the business outcome? So visual attention drives business outcomes. So these are some of our partners who have publicly shared data around our visual attentive measurement with them. So TEEDS, it's a big digital media company. They power a lot of the advertising on all the premium websites that you all use, like New York Times or CNN. And a 5% increase in the attention to the ad creative tends to lead to a 40% increase in brand awareness on their platform. With consumer electronics, we've seen high levels of attention correlate pretty high with shopping conversion metrics. And then our flagship case study with an advertiser is Mars, and we worked with them to build a system that uses AI to evaluate every digital creative that goes out the door, and they use it to predict sales. They prove the relationship with sales just from the creative, not the media, just the creative. And the CEO has since sanctioned to all the brand managers internally to use this system. You put something on YouTube or TikTok or wherever, it's got to go through the system. It gets scored, and it's the go or the no-go system. And the AI enables the scale, which has never previously been done. And we're super excited and honored. We're one of the winning papers at the ARF conference coming up next month. We've been lots of awards around this, and our partner Soren Patilanet there is very unique in being a measurement leader, but he's also more of an engineer and a builder. So, here's a demo of the tech. The sort of technical, I have the technical definition of what's happening here, but it's attention to visual stimuli, detecting when viewers have their eyes on screen while a stimulus is of interest or presented to them. This is not eye tracking or the mapping of the coordinates of the eye following something, which we saw a demo of earlier in Michael's presentation, or Phil's presentation, sorry. But we're using the facial coding, which is a very, very natural way to gauge how actually humans allocate their attention. So we're looking at not only the eyes on the screen, but we're also paying attention to distractions. So chewing gum, talking, eating, looking away are all indicators. So it uses some of the same computer vision as eye tracking, but it's tailored around a taxonomy of how people actually focus themselves. So here's sort of example in play, looking up, looking down. And the way this is built through hundreds of thousands of annotators, we have close to 1 billion labels. So it's human trained AI. And so for every frame on video in our training set, there's 8 annotations, and it's basically a judging system, and that's what trains the machine learning. So again, I'm happy to show or give you the app later today at the lunch. So visual attention AI is getting pretty cool because it's starting to rival humans. It's near the point where it's even surpassing the ability of humans to understand other human attention. And so here we have just over on the left, just the green represents the attentional detection using computer vision, and the right represents the ground truth data of actual psychologists who annotated the same video frames. And then to the right are you could call it what would make the attention meaningful, the facial coding reactions, the facial reactions, which use the facial coding classification. So eyes on screen, happiness, confusion, surprise, disgust, contempt are signals that we're able to pick up. So now that that's visual attention, and I wanted to sort of unveil our really cool integration with iSquare, which was sparked by a collaboration with Meta, which we're also honored as a winning paper at the ARF Audience Science Conference coming up next month, which will be presented by Sophie McIntyre and Bill Harvey. But we're basically taking the visual attention measurement and we're layering on some additional dimensions. So how much concentrated awareness is spent towards the stimulus in view? Number one. Number two, how much is diverted to stimuli in the viewer's environment? That's what iSquare does really well, is the contextual experiences. And then finally, when attention is on, which facial expressions signal cognitive investment into the stimuli the viewers are exposed to. So it's almost like it's just a perfect match of technology, of the realistic contextual environment and all the interaction data that comes along with it, and then putting inside of that visual attention detection and all the emotion reactions on top of that as well to provide color. So this is just a demo of how it's working. So we're looking at things like Netflix and Hulu. People use their phones. This is a purely mobile study that we've been doing with this benchmarking, and just use the app, experience the different media properties, and then we come back with these measures. So that's the quick demo. But we'll share. Maybe we can, Gareth, later we can share the results of that report. It's not public yet, but it's super interesting. But basically, the hypothesis is that different media environments, TikTok versus which is swiping versus Facebook or Instagram, which is newsfeed scrolling, versus YouTube, which is a skip or streaming environment. The quality of attention is different, and what we've proven out is that seconds of attention work vastly different and have vastly different value depending on the media environment. Even when you're controlling for the creative. So super, super, super cool validation, and we're taking that to the industry to try to change the way that advertisers buy media. Today, advertisers usually buy media as every video impression is the same, and you know what? It's not. So we're gonna try to change the world with that. So this is how we're taking the visual attention plus iSquare and putting it into a scalable framework to take action on. So we tell mobile participants, hey, go to this website or go to this app, so go to the mobile video apps. Go to TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, and just use it. So we will have the participants go there, and then we will collect the data. Which advertisers were able to break out of the clutter of those live environments, and then we call that the breakthrough. So we're using attention to show how does your commercial message break out of a real cluttered environment. Usually, advertisers like to fixate on their creative and believe that everybody likes to enjoy their creative, and that's not true. You know, you've got maybe 1% of your audience who will give you the time of day. Then we go deep into the reactions. So we drill down and we show the participants the actual creative message. So we look closely in a forced exposure, the advertiser's creative. So to really get a deep understanding of the messaging efficacy, the story, and that gives a second by second intelligence. And this is where we look at the reactions like happiness or confusion while paying attention, or where does distraction happen. And then finally, this is kind of old school, but we limit to four validation questions against the visual attention to help contextualize the attention data. So we look at brand recognition, ad recall, trust, and likability. And so we found this to be a really elegant way to make meaningful decisions for advertisers looking to decision and diagnose the creative and their placement within media. And so here's an example of how attention can be different across platforms. So on the left, we basically clustered all together newsfeed environments. Then we have short video, and then we have video stream. So newsfeed would be things like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Video shorts would be like TikTok or Snap, and video stream would be like YouTube or Hulu or Netflix. And you might say, the y-axis represents attentive seconds, and the blue bar represents that the viewer recalled the brand. The gray bar that there was a disassociation or does not recall the brand. So you might say, oh, video stream gets so much more attention, it's so much better. Actually, that's not true. In video stream, yes, you do get more attention, but you also have the highest proportion of viewers not caring about or remembering your brand or your ad. So in fact, the news feed, there's much less attention to the commercial message. When people do pay attention, it has a much higher impact, and it's a thesis that we have about leaning in versus leaning back and the speed. We'll be reporting more on this with our Meta partnership next month. So, and then if you were to go into the creative, into the messaging, so you understand the sort of the attentive within an environment, and you want to drill into the actual creative message, this is a good example. So on the left, this is a P&G Swiffer Dusters ad. Okay, I'll show you the next one. Okay, two seemingly similar ads on YouTube, built for YouTube, 6-second bumpers, but radically different performance. So the one on the left is just our reaction score. This is the presence of emotional reactions while paying attention. Was a 6.7 out of 10. On the right, it was a 9.0 out of 10. And this engagement while paying attention basically equates to the quality of a media of the exposure. So can anyone guess what the difference is if you look into if you were to look at the actual narrative of the message? Any key difference pop out on these two creatives? Anyone? That's good. I mean, we're not philosophizers on messaging narratives at Realeyes, but what we saw happening, our hypothesis why there was such a difference here, is that the ad on the left was showing humans performing a very unpleasant task of cleaning. Yeah. So you're partly right. Yeah, or similar. So people generally don't like to watch people going through pain. And we see that we've done a lot of testing around viewing of violence or we talk about it another time. You think of like beheadings, watching beheadings, it just turns people off. So, and then on the right, the one on the right, it was a pretty cool technique if you think about it. I don't know if it was intentional, but the product did the hard job itself without a human. And then at the end, you saw the money shot with the human being all happy, like, after the product did the work itself. So just a couple of final thoughts about all this. So visual attention and the measurement of it. a few implications. So in the measurement world, and Horace will have to talk about this later, but we believe that observational techniques, not just visual attention, and there's a lot of others, but we like the fact that it's behavioral and observational, as we just find increasing trouble with self-reported surveys. Even the US government is becoming gravely concerned about its census and all of its policies because nobody's answering the government surveys anymore, like they used to. There's also just a deeper insight into humanity. You just get different techniques other than answering a self-reported copy test survey are going to give you lots of other rich color. Not that surveys are all bad, but they're abused. The environmental impact. So what if you could, fire less irrelevant impressions into the world because you could actually modulate the meaningfulness or the attentiveness of your messaging or where you put your messaging. So I think there's a direct relationship to even carbon footprint in this. And it seems like in the advertising industry, this is a growing meme or a growing narrative around the carbon footprint of just wasteful advertising. There's also societal well-being versus toxicity. I'm not an academic, but I've read enough academic papers and know that advertising can be a big driver of positive sensation appraisals, which is linked to well-being. But we could spend a whole day talking about well-being versus toxicity of attention and advertising. Then there's also responsible use of AI. So there's consent and biases. So it's important in what we do to have consent and to be wary of biases in our training data. But we may have a bombshell to drop in the coming months or later in the year. Because we have the convenience of being a computer vision company, we can do things like face verification. So in some of the top research panels in the world, some of the folks in here involved with research, we've seen up to 25% fraud and duplicates from the best in breed panel companies that provide the survey takers, which create our censuses, that create our understanding of market industry. No joke, up to 25% in some cases, we've identified duplicates or fraud. Because the computer vision is inferring, oh, we have people representing themselves twice for more incentives in the survey. So, and here's an even bigger potential bombshell. And I'm not saying this is across the board, but we've seen in some cases up to 50% of people with non-white skin mislabeling themselves. And our hypothesis is that it may have to do with access to different incentives, which are inherent in the survey industry, in the panel and research industry. So we have a lot of work to validate this stuff, but this stuff's been coming out ever since we started to look at even using AI to validate what we often call the ground truth data. And it's showing some cracks in the ground truth data, and that's be something to look at. So, and then we have this new thing, generative inputs and outputs. It's taken off, ChatGPT and the ability to quickly spin out new and interesting, useful creatives, or there's even we'll even have like synthetic humans that respond and give us insight about the attention. It's a new world, but these are some of the things we have to think about, in being, responsible and as well as capitalistic. So to us, making money, a business lift is also meaningful to us, but should be done in the right way. So I'm happy to take any questions. This is our POV on visual attention and why it matters. So thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Max?
Yes, Michael. Oh, here's one. Oh, you need to hear me too, yeah.
say too much. Big thank you, first of all, for that beautiful talk.
Yeah.
What could I say? We're going definitely in the same directions, and I could see so many things being connected here. So it was really a masterpiece. I also like your final thoughts very much. We just also started to go into carbon footprint thing. It's quite early, and fair point. I mean, there's something going on in the panel industry. Everybody talks about, and there are big issues. And I think behavioral data, system zero data, they might be a big help. So there's no question. It's just an applause from my side. Maybe Jeff has a question.
Just curious with the Swifter two commercials, was it 50-50 male, female? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it was a general population sample, yeah, on mobile. Yeah. Cool, thank you.